We're live.
All right, great. So welcome to the first virtual cooking class, maybe one, the first of a couple. Hopefully we don't have to do this forever. Hold on one second. Let me shut off the light. I just realized it's very bright. There you go. Maybe that's better. Yep. Actually, exactly. Stuff I should have done before we went live. Okay, better.
Much better.
So what we're doing today is everyone should have some recipe sheets, everyone who's registered for the class. We're gonna learn how to spatchcock a chicken. What that means is instead of a regular roasting technique where you take a whole chicken like this and put it in the oven, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take off the backbone of the chicken, lay the whole thing flat, and cook it that way on a wire rack. Why do we do it? Several reasons. We are the traditional way. You can see there's a big cavity right in the middle here. This is where, it's the cavity of the chicken. This is where the organs used to be. And once it's in the oven, this cavity does not get the same amount of heat as everything else on the surface of the chicken. Meaning it's going to take longer because heat is only going through this way and not that much heat is cooking from the inside. Once we open up the chicken, like I said, we're going to open it up like this. We're going to put on the rack. The rack is going to give it circulation. We're going to be able to get some hot air underneath it. It's going to cook the chicken from both sides. It's going to cook the chicken from the outside as well as the inside. What that means to us is three things. One, the chicken cooks a lot faster. Two, because we're opening it up, everyone loves crispy skin on a roasted chicken. Because we're opening it up, this whole bottom area, which is usually touching your dish and does not get crispy, is now exposed and has a chance to get crispy as well. So you'll have more crispy skin. And thirdly, traditionally, you're doing something like this where everything's getting trusted. The thigh is the least exposed part of the chicken, while the breast is very exposed. So the breast, which unfortunately is the more sensitive, heat sensitive part of the chicken, is getting more heat than it needs while the thigh is cooking. And because the thigh, you need to get the thigh cooked, a lot of times that means you're sacrificing tenderness in the breast. So again, by opening it up, there's more even heat. And the amount of heat that's hitting the thigh is equal to the amount of heat hitting the breasts. So you're gonna get a more even cook.
Ron, before you go any further, someone asked, what is an air-chilled chicken?
Oh, great question. So we're gonna that brings me to my next point, actually, perfectly. I'm using an air-chilled chicken, which means when a chicken is processed, from live to what we see here, one thing that the processors need to do is to bring down the body temperature of the chicken as fast as possible. What that does is it makes sure that there's as little bacterial growth as possible. So it needs to be brought down to 40 degrees as quickly as possible. And the fastest, cheapest way to do it is to just dunk it in water. And that's what a lot of the major big commercial places do. They just, do what they have to do with the bird, toss it in the ice cold water. It cools down, and then you can store it, package it up, send it away. What that traditional method does is it, you surround the bird with water. The bird actually will absorb a lot of that water. So it's going to hold a lot of extra water weight from its original weight, which does two things. One is it plumps up the bird. It gives it gives you a false sense of weight, I guess, with the bird. So you're going to be buying a 6-pound bird, but it's a pound of water. I just made that up. But it is going to carry some significant amount of water in it that was not in the bird originally. Secondly, the skin also absorbs some water. And that's going to prevent it from getting crisp as fast. So in general, when you buy air chilled chicken, the texture is better. The taste, I feel, is better. You're not going to encounter situations where parts of the chicken just shrivel up into nothing. And you'll get the crispier skin. So I always recommend, even though it's a little bit more expensive, I recommend air chilled chicken. And the one brand, I'm not, getting paid by anyone, but the one brand that is everywhere is Bell and Evans. Everything they do is air chilled, so you can trust that. I usually get their brand if I'm out of the supermarket, or so look for that. Yeah, so that's what an air chilled chicken is. So without further ado, I hope that answers the question. Feel free to follow up if I haven't answered any questions. So what we're gonna do, start it off. By introducing you to the chicken. So these classes, I'm hoping to not only just give you the recipe and how to do it, I kind of want to explain to you why we do things, and like maybe teach you a couple of things that you wouldn't expect along the way. So a lot of people look at a chicken and don't know, it's a bird, but it's a living animal. It was a living animal. So this is how a chicken used to stand, right? Just like us, it stands on the legs. The wings are here. So I want you guys to get an understanding of what we're looking at here. This is the breast. This is the breastbone, wings, thigh, and drumstick. What we're going to do is, this is the neck here, leading obviously to where the head would be. Just like us, it follows down our backbone and all the way to our rear. So I want you to, when you look at the chicken, start with breast side down. That will expose the backbone of the chicken. I'm going to start at the top, the neck area. And what I have is a pair of kitchen shears. These are actually chicken shears, poultry shears. It's not necessary for chicken, but if you want to do other birds like a turkey or something like that, it's a little bigger, the bones are a little tougher, so you'll need a pair of these. So right here where there's a little curve, this is where you go all the way down and snip the bone through there. You can get these on Amazon. So starting off, again, this is the backbone. I'm going to cut the backbone out by cutting along the sides all the way down to the bottom. So like I said, with a chicken, you may be able to do it with regular kitchen shears. It depends on how sharp your scissors are. You can even do it with a knife if it's sharp enough, or if it's like you have a meat cleaver or something. Just watch your fingers, because if it's cutting through chicken bone, it's gonna obviously do some damage if your finger gets in the way.
I think that's good advice.
Yeah. So that's it. This is the backbone of the chicken. I'm not going to go into it, but the backbone, another advantage of doing it this way, I have a piece of backbone from the last piece I did, is that you have instant chicken parts to work with to build a sauce. So you can actually make a quick stock while the chicken is cooking. Use the backbone to make a quick stock, and use it in a sauce at the end. So you take the drippings off the pan, mix it with a little wine, mix it with the sauce, mix it with the stock, and then you have a nice sauce right at the end. I'm not going to go into that just because of time, but here's your chicken without the backbone. What I want you to do is turn it around so the skin side is up, and then just press down the middle, and you'll hear a crack. And that's the breastbone, the sternum, so that the chicken lays flat. So again, you'll need a wire rack for this, because now that the chicken is laying flat, heat's going to come on from the top, obviously. And the heat's also going to be able to penetrate from the bottom through the wire rack. So you have a nice air circulation. Okay, so now the seasoning. I'm using a very traditional, what I feel is a very traditional seasoning. Feel free to go wild. If the recipes that, the recipe sheet that Susan sent out this morning along with the link, it actually explains maybe some variations that you want to do, but I'm going to just keep it very simple. Oh, actually, before I put anything, the variation that I'm going to do is, what I want to do is I want to use butter, and I'm going to put the butter inside between the skin and the meat. So that means, let's look at our chicken again. This is the breast area. This is where the head would be. I'm sorry if you're squeamish, but take a finger and separate the meat from the skin. You see what I'm doing here is I'm freeing a small pocket in the breast. You're gonna do it with both sides, and the skin is kind of gonna stick together still in the middle area, and that's okay. You actually kind of want that. There may be some fat in the way. Just rip the fat right off. Push that to the side. Again, that opens up the skin. That does two things. One, we're putting butter in there, so that's going to melt nicely. It gives a place for the butter to go. Secondly, it also, frees up the skin from the meat, which means crispier skin, because air can possibly get in from the top, from the inside. For the thigh, you'll want to come in from this side here. It's going to be pretty loose. You can put your finger into the thigh and all the way down to the drumstick. You see how I'm not sure if you can catch that, but I'm going all the way down to almost the nub of the drumstick. Do the same thing on this side. The reason why I want to do butter on the inside, you'll see some recipes that just slather butter everywhere. I'm not a huge fan of that because butter has a lot of water in it, and water is the enemy of crispiness. Basically, when you are, I'm gonna wash my hands real quick. Basically, when you are, when the oven is cooking, right, when the chicken is cooking, the first thing the heat has to do, if you have the butter, is evaporate the water out of the butter before it has a chance to start crisping the skin. So I like a little oil on the outside of the chicken, but the butter, I like to put it on the inside. It adds a lot of flavor, but it also, it adds a lot of flavor without having that problem with the skin. So this is all on the recipe sheet that's attached to your link. So I have 4 tablespoons of butter, room temperature, very soft. I bet you this is the hardest part of the recipe, that you're gonna forget to take the butter out, and it's gonna be hard. I have a tablespoon of dried oregano, teaspoon and a half of salt. I use kosher salt. If you're using regular table salt, I would half that amount. It's not that it's saltier, but it's denser. So, a teaspoon of kosher salt is a teaspoon of table salt is a lot less salt than a teaspoon of kosher salt. So I have my salt, my oregano, I have a microplane. This is a tool that I cannot live without. And I have a couple pieces of garlic. And what I'm gonna do is just run the microplane, right? Run the garlic over the microplane. And get some of that pureed garlic in there. While I have the microplane out, I'm also gonna add the zest of 1 lemon. I like using the zest as opposed to the juice. Some recipes will probably call for juice. What that means though, is that the acid from the juice is going to start marinating the chicken, which is good if you feel like you need it. I don't feel like an air dried chicken necessarily needs it. But it's bad in that if you leave it too long, it starts breaking down the meat and it doesn't look quite as nice. So I have my chicken with my butter with salt, lemon, garlic, and oregano. Just gonna fold that together. Again, you'll probably forget to take it out of the butter out when you're ready to do this. So this will probably be the hardest part. I almost forgot today. And that's it. You have an awesome compound butter. This is very flavorful. You can use different seasonings if you want, but I do recommend always using the lemon. It really makes a difference in the dish. It adds a real brightness to it. So I'm just gonna get my hands dirty. First, I'm gonna do, you can do it in whatever order, but I just find this to be the cleanest way. I also have just oregano, dried oregano, smoked paprika, and just some salt. I don't have measurements for these, be generous. So this is the stuff that's gonna go on the outside of your chicken. By the outside, I mean the top of the skin, as well as the underside. So I'll just start off with the underside. Be liberal with the salt, unless you don't want to be. I'm not gonna force you to over salt your chicken, but it does taste better. I didn't put, oh, you know what? One trick that I have learned is that there's like a flap piece. It's I think it's the diaphragm of the chicken that's covering the thigh right here. So if you look at it, if you look, there's a flap right there. Just cut that off. It doesn't really do anything when you're eating it, but it does stop the underside of the thigh from cooking. So I like to just, it's like a little flap of skin. Hope no one's squeamish and didn't realize what they were signing up for. Of course, you have to wash your hands when you're working with chicken. It has a potential of salmonella. So, all right. So you can see I'm touching the chicken with this hand, doing everything else with that hand. It's just the safest way to go. This is all just, cover everything up. You can be liberal. Take a little oil, and that'll help just kind of mix everything in. Turn it around. Same thing. Mix it in, season with salt. It may look like a lot of salt, but I always like to say, be aware of how thick whatever you're cooking is, because the salt doesn't penetrate really into the flesh. So, as if you bite into something thick, you're only going to have salt on the outside of it. So, if you have a 2-inch steak, you're going to want to salt it a lot more than if you have a 1/2-inch steak, just because when you bite into it, there's going to be a lot more unsalted pieces. Can everyone see okay? I'm just afraid that maybe.
No, I think you're doing great, Ron.
Okay.
The top of your head is cut off a little bit, but the important
That's fine. No one needs to
chicken
see
is
that.
viewable.
That's almost on purpose, Susan.
Okay.
All right. So the outside is completely covered. Looks great. We're going to go into the inside now. Again, here are our pockets. There are 4 pockets, right? 1, 2 breast, 1, 2 thigh and drum. I'm just going to divide it into 4. You don't need to use all the butter. In fact, if you do too much, let's say you have a smaller piece of chicken, you don't want to over butter. The reason for that is that the butter will eventually melt and drip out. And we're running this oven pretty hot, so you're going to have a situation where you're going to open up this oven and you're going to have a plume of smoke because of burning butter dripping onto your tray. But as you can see, this goes right into there. Once all the butter has been put in, I know this sounds a little weird, but think of it as a tube of toothpaste, right? And you're squeezing through the toothpaste, you're squeezing the outside and moving the inside stuff around. So just, go to where the butter is and just kind of move it around so that the butter spreads. This is why it's important to have soft butter. If you have, obviously, it's harder to mix, but also if you have hard butter, it's harder to move the butter around from under the skin. So right now there's a thin layer of butter kind of evenly across the inside pocket of the chicken. I want to show this to you again, how it looks. Let me wash my hands. So here you go. Everything's laid flat. Notice how the legs are arranged so that all the skin is facing up, rather than if I had flipped it upside down, the flesh would be facing up. The wings are tucked in, so the wings don't burn too much. It's okay if the wings burn, it's just a little piece of meat. What I like to do is, because my oven has it, I like to put a probe thermometer into it. In my recipes, one of the changes that I made is, I've always put it into the thigh, which makes sense if you are cooking it whole. But because, like I said, everything kind of gets even heat, you really want to make sure that, your breast is done, because that is the thickest part of the chicken. And because everything's getting hit with the heat at the same time now, it's more important that your breast gets it. That's the right temperature. So I'm going to take the probe, come in through. I wish I could lift this up. Coming through the head area and stick it into the thickest part of the chicken. Okay.
Excuse me, Ron. Someone wants to know if you can prepare the chicken in advance and then refrigerate it and roast it later.
Absolutely. There's actually an advantage to that. And thank you for reminding me. I didn't get into it. I actually like to, at this point, before I stick the thermometer in there, I actually like to put it into, just like this, into the refrigerator, uncovered. Bottom rack, of course, because you don't want anything dripping, you don't want this dripping on anything. But the refrigerator has very cold, dry heat. It has very dry air, which means it absorbs moisture. So by exposing the skin like this, uncovered, leave it overnight. When you get back the next morning, it's going to look tacky. It's going to look dry. It's almost going to be like papery. That will get you very, very crispy skin. So thank you for reminding me. That the only thing you're going to have to watch out for is, because the skin will crisp up so well. Maybe 20 minutes in, check it, make sure the skin isn't burning. And if you see that it's getting too dark, just it's probably going to be around the breast area. Just put a sheet of aluminum foil just very loosely over it. But that's a very good question. In fact, if I weren't doing this class and I was cooking for my family, I would do exactly the same thing, which is prep it overnight, leave it in the fridge, and you actually get a better result the next day. So I'm going to put it in. I'm going to spew out some temperatures that don't necessarily agree with the USDA recommended temperatures. USDA, if you're running a restaurant, will require you to cook chicken to 165 degrees throughout. And that's a safety issue. Obviously, you don't want any bacteria left in it. I like to cook, again, I have the probe in the breast. I like to cook the breast to 150. Is it safe? For the most part, it is. So the 165 that the USDA recommends is, at 165, basically bacteria just dies almost instantaneously. But to pasteurize is it's not just temperature, it's time. So at 150, all bacteria dies in a little over a minute. So you get the same results. Again, if you're squeamish about it, you're not going to get pink meat or anything like that at 150. But if you're squeamish about it, cook everything to 165. Just know that the breasts at around 150, once it goes past 150, it starts, the muscles there start, because it's so lean, it starts to contract and it squeezes out moisture in the chicken. So you're gonna be left with, once you hit like 165, 170, you're gonna have that breast that no one wants. It's that breast that it's the reason why people who like a nice fatty chicken will go for the dark meat. But not in this case. If you cook it to 150, everyone's gonna enjoy everything, I promise. All right, so that's in the oven. We are gonna fast forward to, so if you don't have a thermometer or a probe, I do recommend it, but Bell and Evan chickens, they're usually around 3.5 to 4.5, 5 pounds. I would say that with this method, you're gonna have a fully cooked chicken in about 45 minutes max. So if you don't have a thermometer, go with time. Once it comes out, you'll want to let it rest for at least 10 minutes. That kind of distributes the heat, redistributes the juices, and it's gonna be awesome. So through the magic of television, I have cooked the second bird, which is done. This has been resting. This came out of the oven right before, like maybe 10 minutes before we started the class. I'm actually gonna lift up the camera for this. All right, so that's the bird right there. The skin, well, because it's been resting for a little longer than I wanted to, isn't super crispy, but it is, if you throw this back in the oven, if I threw this back in the oven, it would crisp up great. You can see it's completely evenly cooked. And I'm gonna show you how to, serve it. So one disadvantage I would say with this method is that if you're, say, doing it for Thanksgiving, you're using a turkey, is this doesn't look as sexy as a nice whole chicken. So, a lot of times you would break it apart in the kitchen and then bring it to the table rather than carve it at the table, which a lot of people like to do. So you can see it's juicy. Here's the chicken again. I want to lift. What you want to do is you want to take a knife. I just happen to have a carving knife. The thigh, this is the thigh here. This is the breast here. You see there's a loose piece of skin right there. All you have to do is cut through that skin, and literally the muscle just falls right off. So this is your thigh and your drumstick. Thigh and the drumstick there's a joint in the middle. So it's right around here. It takes some practice to identify, but you just cut right down. So the breasts, there's going to be a bone right down the middle right here. It's kind of, it's this breastbone. So you want to just cut to the side of it. One side here, one side there. What I will say is that there is, even though you hit the temperature of safe food, there is sometimes redness in the chicken. While I can't tell you for sure exactly why this is, my gut feeling says that it's because there's always bone left in the blood. There's always blood left in the bone when you cook the chicken. So, when you're cracking bones and you're cutting things that, right down the middle, some of that coloring may leak out. And you'll find that especially so if you're letting it rest overnight. So just a warning, if you don't like it, you can actually cook it out after, you can take this cut and just pop it back in the oven for a couple minutes and it'll disappear. So I've cut the backbone piece out. That is the sternum piece, actually. That's kind of, that used to rest right in the middle of the breast. And just to make this a more manageable piece to eat, here's your breast, here's your wing. I'm just gonna go straight down the middle and chop that. So now you have 8 pieces to go. 8 pieces to serve, and you can just make it look nice. Oops. There you go. And you know, if you wanted to make a gravy for it, like I said, I didn't have time to, I'm not gonna have time to do the gravy, but you can take all the drippings that came out, mix it with the stock that you made with the backbone, with the drippings on the tray, all that stuff mixed together. Put some salt. You may not even need salt. Just, you know, put a pat of butter in it off the heat, whisk it, and it's gonna be beautiful. So that's the first dish. I did want to make a class for you guys that not only featured one thing, but, you know, allowed you to have a whole meal. So the second thing that we're gonna make is a quick side for the chicken. Because it's fall, I feel like a lot of people don't like to roast chicken in the summer. So it's fall, you're roasting your chicken, you like your house warm. One vegetable that's really great in the fall is radicchio. Just grab that from the fridge. So I'm going to show you how to roast the radicchio real quick. This is a radicchio. It looks like a cabbage, but it's actually in the chicory family. So if you're Italian and you eat, escarole with cannellini and pasta, it's in the same family. Endives is the same. Let me just wipe down this area first. Does anyone have any questions? I don't know how weird it is watching a video rather than it being live. No questions. Okay.
It's a little different watching the video than when you were.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't feel like it's dragging on just because it's live. It's on video, but we're almost there. This is super quick.
We have a couple people telling you that you're doing great, and I think it's wonderful that they're watching you wash your hands, wash everything off.
Yes,
that's how you're supposed to cook.
Yes, because you do not want to get raw chicken on your vegetables. So radicchio, this is a very, just like escarole, just like endives, it's bitter. What I would advise is with any sort of cooking, whether with any sort of food, not just radicchio, is that if you can eat it raw, I would recommend, if you can eat it raw, or you can eat it through this, have little tastes through the stages of cooking, without obviously health risks, you should do it. That way you kind of understand how the flavors kind of transform in the vegetable while you during the cooking process. So I'm gonna cut these into wedges of this one's a big-ish one. I'm gonna cut it into 8. If you have a smaller one, cut it into 6 pieces. So this is also a beautiful vegetable. It just looks very nice. All right. You want to make sure that there's a stem connecting it. For this application, you're going to want to cut down the middle of the stem. That way, it's wedged and you can keep the leaves on. Some of them will fall out, obviously, but you want to keep as much on as possible. Okay. From here, you're going to want to just let it rest for a little bit. You want to season. You'll want to put salt on each piece, especially kind of like on the cut parts. What that's going to do is the salt draws out. Like I said, it's raw. It's a very bitter green, but taste it. That way you have a feeling of what you're getting into, and it's really incredible how the flavors transform as you cook them, as you cook a radicchio. So the first transformation is seasoning. This is just some salt. You don't need too much, but what the salt is going to do is it's not just doing, a favor to you're not just flavoring it, but salt will actually draw out water from the radicchio. I will let that sit for at least, I'd say 10, 15 minutes. And you'll see a big difference when you come back. The leaves will feel a little softer. You'll see maybe a little pool of water on the bottom. It's just the salt drawing the water out of the radicchio. I don't usually eat if I'm at a restaurant, but this is my home. But taste it. Let it sit for 10 minutes, and then taste it again for real. You'll find that the salt has really mellowed out the radicchio. As it's resting, I want to make a sauce for it. So today we're gonna make a what's called gastrique for the sauce. Gastrique is essentially a mix of something sweet and something sour. So most of the time it's, I'm in this case I'm using honey for the sweet and apple cider vinegar for the sour. So this is half a cup. This is all in the recipe sheet. Half a cup of apple cider vinegar. And just for a little extra flavor, I have a half an inch knob of ginger that's been peeled. I'm just gonna smash it and put it in. And Ryan, if you want to switch over to this camera. So, just mix it up. Make sure it's well mixed. I want to let that reduce. You want it back to the consistency of the honey, which is you're gonna get that around halfway, maybe a little bit more. See how it's blended nice and smooth. Everything's blended together. The ginger is just gonna steep in there. It's gonna be great. And if you don't mind switching back, Ryan. And the other thing I'm going to add to
Ryan,
it is.
Can you switch back to the other camera?
Thank you. Perfect. The other thing I'm going to add to it is grapefruit. Right around this time, later in the fall, winter time, grapefruits really start tasting good. So it goes great with other things that are growing around this time, which happens to, I always say, if you shop with the seasons, or if you put ingredients together with the seasons, you can't really go wrong. So, the radicchios are kind of having their fall bloom right now. The grapefruits are tasting good. Everything's going to pair together really well. I'm going to show you how to supreme an grapefruit. This will work for any citrus. I'm actually going to bring it closer in. So to supreme means to just take out all of the pith and all of the walls of the citrus, leaving you with just the fleshy kind of like bubbly piece. So I'm going to take off enough to expose the flesh. Take off a little bit more there. Okay. So now you can see where the pith starts, right around there. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the knife and I'm going to run it down. I'll take off a little bit. That's okay, because I'm actually going to use the juice for it. So what you're left with is just this exposed piece. Now you can see where the pith is along this line. So just follow that line across again. All right. A sharp knife helps.
Ron, is it possible to use a large orange if you don't have grapefruit?
Yeah, you can use any citrus. Any citrus will go great with in this dish. It's just the grapefruit kind of lends a lot more complex of a flavor, whereas orange will be an orange, and you know, you already have a lot of good sweetness and tart coming from the gastrique. So yes, the short answer is yes. The long answer is, but this will taste better. So now you have, you know, you have this grapefruit here with no pith all around, and you're going to see these wall segments. So like here's one, and here's one. So you want to cut along the wedges, and what you'll be left with is a piece of grapefruit. Not sure that focused right, with none of the segments. So I can easily break it apart like that. So you do it for the whole thing. And try to save, you know, there'll be juice leaking everywhere. Just, we're gonna use it, just save it. It's gonna go nicely into the final dish. Obviously, if you're using the same cutting board as what you were doing your chicken on, make sure you're working on a clean cutting board. I hope everyone can see what I'm doing. So you have all these wonderful segments, and you're left with this juicy middle. I'm gonna just put everything into the final step area where we're gonna toss everything together. So take these pieces, just break them into a smaller piece, break them in half, put them in a bowl. I'm gonna turn this gastrique off. So I don't know how long that was, but on high, that was about the time it took me to reduce the gastrique. Don't waste anything. You have this whole middle, just squeeze all the juice out. Skin, same thing, squeeze all the juice out. Okay, and you're left with, oh, can't see it without spilling. You have a bowl of lovely grapefruit segments. So, just so we don't have to wait for the radicchio to rest, what I did was cooked it all beforehand. So the oven is going to be set to 425 for this application. If you want to cook it with your chicken, you know, the chicken we're cooking at 475. If you put if you start everything else, the gastrique, the grapefruit, and you have this all seasoned and it's well rested, you can just pop it in to the oven along with the chicken, maybe approximately 5 minutes before when you think is done. And then when you pull out the chicken, just drop the oven down to the 425. Just note that you know, in the recipe I said 12 minutes, but because you're cooking it initially at a higher heat, it's not going to take all 12 minutes. It's going to be a lot faster. So like I said, it's going to turn from this seasoned. I'm going to put some oil on it. I'm going to pretend this has already been rested for long enough. As you can, I don't know if you can see it, but you can already see kind of the water seeping off of it, wicking off of it. Little seasoning. I'm going to put a little pepper on it, and we'll put it in the oven at 425 for about 12 minutes. And you're going to get something like this. You can see the wedges are still held together very nicely, but it is very limp. This is perfect. You don't necessarily need the brown, because this next step is where we're going to get the brown. You're going to take the gastrique. It's not going to feel like it's as thick as honey just because it's hot. But like I said, halfway. If you reduce it halfway, it's kind of about where you need to be. I'm just going to get this hot, a pan hot. It's very pungent too. So when you pour it out, just be careful. When you sniff it, if you take a deep breath, you're gonna cough. Let's put all the pieces in there and just give it a quick toss. Like I said, again, you have these leftover pieces. Taste it, see where you are. You know, you're gonna want to know what things taste like every step of the way. So, you know, you have your pieces. You just want to make sure it gets on the open leaf side, the cut side, as well as the back, but really we're just charring the cut side. There's just a little hint of ginger, not too much, which is nice. So now you have everything kind of soaking for a little bit. I have a pan heating up, cast iron pan heating up on the side. And what I'm gonna do is give this a hard sear. It's already warm. It's already ready to go, ready to eat. But what this is going to do is, by giving it a hard sear, the honey, the sugars in the honey is going to really caramelize this, along with just amazing flavors that go along with browning anything. So, you know, it just adds an extra layer of complexity. It's kind of like if you've ever eaten Brussels sprouts that do not have char on it. It kind of tastes like gross cabbage. But you put that char on, it becomes a brand new thing. Same thing. Okay, Ryan, if you don't mind switching back to the other. Thank you. You just want a little oil, just enough to coat the bottom. This can get, just a warning, you're dealing with very hot stuff here. And when you put something liquidy on a hot pan with oil, there is a chance that the oil will pop out and ignite. So I always tell people who don't do this all the time, when you're dealing with something very hot like this, turn off the stove as you're putting things in, and then turn it back on once everything's in. I'm gonna turn on the hood real quick because it's gonna smoke, so hopefully that doesn't make things too loud, but it's gonna go off at the end. Turn it back up. Can people hear me okay with the hood on?
I don't hear the exhaust fan at all.
Oh, good. I don't want any incidents like I have at the library.
Oh.
All right. So this is very quick. Once again, everything's cooked already. You could have eaten it right off the pan, but what you want to do is just give it a quick brown. So leave it untouched. I'm just patience. Don't touch it.
Ron, can you tell us what type of oil you used for this?
Neutral oil. Anytime I'm heating up oil very hot, I like to stay away from the extra virgin, because you know, a neutral oil has a much hotter smoking point, whereas extra virgin olive oil will likely to kind of burn out and kind of leave you with an off flavor. So you can see as I'm flipping that there is some brown. I would actually like more brown, so I'm going to keep the rest of them on their side a little bit more. That's almost there. Yeah. I'm going to see if I'll bring it up to you guys. Don't do this at home if you're not used to the heat. This does hurt, but I'm used to it. You can use like a bigger spatula. All right, and we're gonna let that go stew. And what we're smelling, what I'm smelling is some sugars burning, but not to the point where it's inedible. Again, that burning of sugar on its own may be kind of off-putting, but with the vinegar and with everything else, it actually is going to go very well with the dish. And you can see also that the rest of the gas streak is reducing. You can see that by the size of the bubbles. You can tell that it's a thicker liquid now. And once that's done, save the gas streak also. Whatever's left in there, if we're clean about it, save it. Honey's kind of expensive. You can toss it you can toss anything in it. I love to do it with squash too. So we're just gonna take these. Put it right in the bowl with the grapefruit. We're not going to take all the juices out of the grapefruit or else we'll have a watery mess, but this is all, going to flavor it. Give a quick toss. And Ryan, if you don't mind going back to the camera. All right. There are nicer ways to plate this if if you're not doing this kind of family style, but it's gonna be delicious. Let's take the grapefruit. Again, you don't need all the juices out of it. In fact, I don't think I'm even gonna use all the grapefruit. But, there you have it.
So Ron, is it all right if I unmute everyone so they can ask you questions directly?
Absolutely. So here are your dishes, the 2 dishes. It took a little less than an hour. Obviously, I did the magic of television for you, but just to give you an understanding of how far along the chicken is, I am cooking the breast to 150 and it's already at 130. So in the time from the beginning when I put the chicken in till now, we're almost done. It's gonna be an extra like 5-10 minutes. So just to give you an idea of how quick a roast chicken can be when you open it up, spatchcock it. So anyway, thank you very much, and I'm open for questions. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna start cleaning as well. But I am listening.
You must have done a good job because it doesn't look like anyone has questions.
Don't be shy.
Well, I'll ask. Somebody had asked, and I'm curious too, what kind of oil did you use? You said you didn't use.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so neutral. What that means is vegetable oil, canola oil. If you want to get fancier, then it's like sunflower oil, safflower oil. That's like the stuff that you would pay $10 for at Whole Foods. Basically oils that are light in color. So even a light olive oil will do.
What about grapeseed?
Grapeseed oil works. Yes, grapeseed oil is a very high smoking point oil. So you can definitely use grapeseed.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Paul.
Looks delicious.
Thank you. Thank you. I may eat the whole thing.
You did do a great job, Ron. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for attending. Maybe we'll talk, Susan. Maybe there'll be more in the future.
Definitely. Actually, people can let us know what type of items they'd like you to.
Yeah, I would love
with.
that. Yep. So I do try to have a focus, which is not only am I making, I do have a couple of objectives every time I cook. So I am open to ideas. But when I do these classes, I like to at least get a meal on the table. I don't want to just do one thing and call it a day. The second thing is I also like to teach technique as we go along, you know, so this time I showed you how to supreme a citrus, how to spatchcock a chicken. So, you know, if you have certain things that maybe you've seen online that you know, you want to learn more about, I guess, like Susan said, just let us know and we'll figure it out.
All right. Thank
Great.
you. Wonderful job.
Yeah.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you very much.
Have
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Looks delicious.